The Abbey bell rang once, low and steady, a bronze note drifting across the valley. The sound rolled over the fields and cottages like a gentle tide, echoing through the air until even the frost on the hedges seemed to quiver. Then silence followed, a silence so deep it felt as though the whole world had paused to take a long, slow breath. In the village of Willowmere, people were finishing their day. The baker closed the shutters of his oven, though the faint smell of bread still clung to the air like a blanket. The smith put away his hammer, its last strike still humming softly in memory. Children were ushered into bed, their laughter dimming into murmurs. Fires sank low in the hearths, glowing embers rather than bright flames, while roofs glistened with frost. Beyond the cottages, a narrow path wound upward, past meadows and hedgerows toward the Abbey Hill. It was a path worn by centuries of feet, stones smoothed by shepherds, pilgrims, and travelers seeking a night of shelter. Along this path walked Elric, a young traveler whose lantern burned like a golden seed in the dark. Elric's cloak rustled softly as he walked, wool brushing against the bramble-thorn hedges. His boots pressed into the earth, crunching frost and scattering brittle leaves. Each sound echoed gently, yet never broke the night's peace. Instead, they became part of its rhythm, like the steady turning of a wheel. The air smelled of wood smoke drifting from the village, of damp soil resting after the harvest, of pine sap where the path brushed close to the forest. His breath rose pale in the lantern's glow, drifting upward in clouds that lingered before fading into the cold night. The stars overhead had already begun their climb. They appeared one by one, patient and deliberate, as though taking their places on a stage. The sky was a velvet curtain, embroidered with silver. Far above, the moon was rising, bright enough to paint faint shadows along the ground. As he walked, Elric felt the path itself guiding him. There was no hurry. The journey was not about arriving, but about being in the moment. Each step, each breath, each flicker of light upon the stones. At last, he reached the crest of the hill. The Abbey stood ahead, solid and timeless, its stone walls softened by ivy. The towers were not tall nor proud, but humble, their edges worn round by years of rain and wind. Windows glowed faintly with candlelight, steady points of gold in the dark. Elric entered through the wooden gate, its hinges sighing gently as if relieved to be used. Inside lay the cloister garden, quiet and alive. Gravel paths stretched between beds of herbs, rosemary, lavender, and sage. Though it was late autumn, they still offered fragrance when brushed, scents that mingled with the cool air. A fountain stood at the center, its water spilling over stone in a silver whisper. The sound soothed the garden as if reminding every leaf and pebble that the world could be gentle. The arches surrounding the cloister cast long shadows, and beyond them, muffled chants from the abbey echoed like distant waves. On a stone bench sat an elderly monk. His robe was worn thin at the sleeves, the color of parchment, aged by time. Beside him, a single candle burned in a small clay holder, its flame bending in the breeze. He looked up as Elric approached, his eyes lined with years, but softened with kindness. "You walk gently," the monk said, his voice low, as though meant not to disturb the night. "That is the right way to walk in a place of rest." Elric bowed slightly. "I like the stillness here. It feels as though the world has put its worries away." The monk smiled faintly. "Would you care for a story? A story is a lantern for the heart, and every lantern helps us find our way in the dark." Elric sat settling onto the cool bench. The fountain whispered, the candle flickered, and the knight leaned closer to listen. Many winters ago, the monk began, when this abbey was young and its stones still sharp with newness, there lived a woman known as the Lantern Keeper. She was neither nun nor noble, but she loved the abbey and the village that rested in its care. Each evening, as the sun set, she climbed the narrow stairway of the gatehouse tower, carrying her lantern. She would set it in the window overlooking the valley. From there, the flame could be seen for miles, a warm beacon for anyone traveling after dark. But this was no ordinary flame. Some said her lantern held more than fire. They whispered that it glowed with the light of kindness itself, and that it could ease the weary heart even before the traveler reached the abbey doors. Seasons passed. Frost covered the fields. Blossoms returned. Harvests filled the barns. Still, the lantern shone. Travelers spoke of it with gratitude. It was called the Star of Willowmere, for to see it in the distance was to know you would not be turned away. Then, one winter, a storm unlike any before struck the valley. Snow fell in heavy sheets, winds howled through the lanes, and roads vanished beneath drifts. The abbey itself trembled in the gale. The lantern keeper's oil grew scarce. Her hands shook from the cold, and each night she feared the flame might fail. Yet she remembered her duty to keep the light burning for the lost. She cupped her hands around the lantern, shielding it from the storm's breath. She rationed every drop of oil, trimming the wick, keeping the flame alive. And though the winds raged, not a single traveler was lost that winter. They saw the faint, steady glow and followed it through the storm to the abbey's safety. When spring finally returned, the lantern keeper was old, her hair silver, her body bent. But still, she climbed the stairs each evening to place her flame. And when her time came to leave this world, the brothers of the abbey found her lantern still warm to the touch, though no oil remained. Since that day, the monk said softly, a lamp has always burned in the abbey tower, not just as a light for travelers, but as a reminder that kindness, once given, is never truly extinguished. The monk's words lingered in the night air, settling gently like falling snow. Elric closed his eyes for a moment, imagining the lantern shining through the storm. He felt its warmth in his chest, steady and calm. "Thank you," he whispered. The monk nodded. "Carry the story with you, and it will keep your own flame alive." Elric rose from the bench, bowed once more, and made his way back through the cloister. His lantern swayed in his hand, its flame steady despite the chill breeze. The path down the hill seemed different now, slower, softer. Frost glimmered at the edges of the grass, sparkling as though each blade held its own tiny lantern. The stars above had multiplied, filling the sky with silver. The moon hung higher, casting gentle light on the abbey roof. In the village below, cottages slept. Smoke curled faintly from chimneys. Dogs stirred, only enough to sigh and settle again. The whole valley seemed to rest, the story itself woven into its slumber. At last, Elric reached his small cottage. He set his lantern on the table, the flame glowing like a friend who had walked with him. He lay upon his straw mattress, pulled the quilt close, and closed his eyes. Through the window, he could still see the faint glow of the abbey lantern high on the hill. Beyond it, the stars kept their patient watch, and in the deep quiet of Willowmere, the world folded into peace, like a flame steady against the night.